All right. Think I'm now live. Can y'all see me out there? Go ahead and sound off in the chat if you can. Um, yeah, actually managed to get started on time this time around. Good job, Drex. Good job. Yeah, if you all could just go ahead and sound off in the chat, let me know that you can see me and hear me just fine. That'd be super duper helpful to me. Let me know that technology works because every once in a while it looks all good over on my end, and then when we get something gets lost in translation by the time it gets over on everybody else's side. Um, yeah, so not gonna lie, feels quite odd uh, doing a live stream right now with the state of affairs in the world. Couldn't do one last week because I had a scheduling conflict, but yeah, um, there's a whole lot of people in the poi world that live in Eastern Europe and in Russia, and there's a lot of people out there that are hurting pretty bad right now. Oh, hi, Mandolin. Um, and my heart goes out to them. Um, Interestingly enough, I have chatted with quite a few Russian poi spinners in the past couple days, and they've made it pretty clear that they don't they have long felt like they haven't had a say in their government, and as I'm sure people have seen, there are mass protests going on right now in St. Petersburg and Moscow. So yeah, it sucks because it seems like absolutely nobody wants what's going on right now except for one person in particular. Grr. Yeah. Oh, hi, Kurt Hobbs. How you doing? Cool, cool. I'm gonna give it say like 5 minutes for people to saunter on in here. I definitely kind of put this together at the last minute. I so in my defense, I thought I had set this up on Monday, and I don't know what happened. I think perhaps I was busy with something else, and I didn't realize until it was too late that that I hadn't actually set this up. So I apologize to all of you who had like 24 hours of advance notice that this was happening. But I appreciate you showing up nonetheless. Yeah, I need to be better on my game about that sort of thing. For those of you who are just tuning in for your first tech tips, here's the format of how this works. I'm going to do a lesson here until about 7:30 on the topic of my choosing. In this case, it's going to be combining together the idea of poi dime stops with stacking. And well, so dime stops are an idea from dance, but stacking is a poi idea. But I think the two overlap in ways that I think are really cool. And for the latter half hour, I'm going to be taking questions. So it is almost 7:05 where I live, and so I'm going to be going until 8 o'clock tonight. Is the plan, unless like it's really popping off in the Q&A section. But yeah, um, oh, that's interesting. Sorry, let me. Okay, that's weird. Um, yeah, so I actually have two different places where the chat pops up, and that did not pop up on the other one. That's very interesting. Anywho, yeah, so I'm gonna give just a couple more minutes for people to saunter in here. Big thanks to UltraPoi for sponsoring this here live stream, like they do all my live streams. They're the reason that y'all get direct access to me, so I hope you thank them for making these possible. Um, I, if you want to grab a set of these orb poi that I'll be using to demonstrate everything in this video, you can head on over to ultrapoi.com. Use my promo code DrexFactor with a 0 instead of an O at checkout. That will get you a discount on your order, and it helps out the channel, which makes me very happy. Anywho, yeah, I'm going to give you just like 2 minutes for people to keep on sauntering in. Again, that is, we'll do a lesson for just shy of a half an hour, and then I'll do a half an hour of Q&A on whatever y'all want to ask me about. There's no topic that is off limits, but I don't know. I may choose not to. I may choose not to answer the question if you ask me something that's super personal. We'll just have to see how that works out. Yeah. How is everybody else doing tonight? Where's everybody joining me from? Chime in with your location in the chat. I'd love to find out where this broadcast is reaching tonight. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and start with the lesson in like just 1 minute. But before I do, I'd love to see where everybody is at. I am coming at you live. Actually, I should tilt this down a little bit because you can see the top of the screen in that. I suppose you can still see the edge of it, but oh well. I'm coming at you from Washington, well, just on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland. Oh, Rafael Rice is in Brazil. Hello. Jake White, Gold Coast, Australia. Mandalin's in D.C. Hello, one and all. Cool, cool. Busy as always in Sacramento. It's termite season. Oh, goodness. I think every place has its unique bug problems. Here in DC, we get a lot of cockroaches because it is so humid. But yeah, termites. Ugh. Cool, cool. All right. And with that, I'm going to get started. Oh, our friend here who Mantalakia, maybe, is from California. Hello. How's it going? All right. So let me switch over. All right. So the name of the game tonight is going to be Dimestops. So let's start off by talking about what a dime stop is. Now, I'm borrowing this name from the dance world, and specifically from the hip hop dance world. If you've seen people that do, say, like popping or locking, the phenomenon are related. The idea behind doing a dime stop is that as you're moving, you boom, just freeze in place, right? And the whole point of this is that the movement just stops. And usually there's like a little bit of almost kind of like a recoil when it happens, like boom, and that kind of like reinforces that something has just happened. So like if you've ever seen people doing the robot dance, there's a lot of locking involved in that. I'm not terribly good at that. But it's definitely something that you can like boom, 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 go between different locked locations. And sometimes you can really, really emphasize it by, say, turning it into something where, you lock and there's like a little shaking for a moment. That really can emphasize these kinds of motions. Um, but locking isn't typically done with poi. Let me show you why. With poi, we're usually swinging the poi around, right? So if I go and say decide to lock, notice how the poi are still swinging. It kind of takes away from the effect of the boom, dime stop, right? So I could be spinning if I wanted to, and boom, boom, boom. Now, again, it kind of distracts from the dime stops, and also because I have to keep moving the local parts of my body that are involved in spinning the poi, it means that the dime stop never really sets in the same way. While there's still something moving, it kind of it takes away from the effect. It makes it feel less like I'm doing the dime stop because your eyes are still following the poi moving. So the effect totally gets lost. And likewise, if I'm spinning the poi and I decide to stop them, then boom, again, the poi kind of ruin the effect by continuing to swing, even if they're doing pendulums, right? So, this is part of a problem that I like to refer to as the suspension problem with poi. Um, so, like for instance, I trained in modern dance, and one of those things that you find frequently in modern dance is what are called suspensions, moments when you like find a pose and you want to kind of hold on to it for a second. Like you do a bunch of motion and boom, you hold the pose before you come to the next thing. And it kind of like adds a moment of before you get to the next thing. It's like a dynamic shift, right? And sometimes that suspension can be just perfectly frozen, and sometimes it can have momentum to it. It's like catching a snapshot of something before you move on to the next thing. And notoriously, poi is not good at suspensions. Poi is not good at suspensions because we have to keep the poi moving the entire time. And granted, we have a range of tempos here. So, I could spin the poi as slowly as I possibly can, or I could spin them as fast as I can. And there's a range of tempos there. But one thing that's kind of off limits in that is I don't get to just make the poi stop, because then they lose momentum and they just kind of hang there. And what's worse is when that happens, you lose control over what the poi are doing. They kind of like this very literally is a problem in physics known as the double pendulum problem, wherein once you cease to add momentum to the poi, the movement of them is actually so chaotic that physics can't even predict what happens to them next. So doing suspensions with poi is tremendously difficult. There are some ways around this that people have found, though. For instance, um, Ty Rochford, a poi dancer from Florida, whom I'm a huge fan of, regularly uses gunslingers, and specifically gunslinger spiral wraps, as a way to do his suspensions. So if you watch him real carefully, you'll see him do a dime stop where he uses a he's so much better at this than I am, where he will say use those spiral wraps with his gunslingers to pause the poi and enter into his suspensions, right? I respect the technique, but it's one that I've had trouble integrating into my own style. Oh, there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat. Cool. Oh, people are watching from all over. I'm glad to see that. Okay, so aside from, say, going into a spiral wrap, which don't get me wrong, I love them to death, are there any other solutions for finding suspensions, and specifically finding the kind of suspensions that we need in order to make dime stops register? As it turns out, there is, and it's a pretty obscure and somewhat forgotten corner of the poi world. Um, Y'all probably know that I'm a massive fan of Ronan McLaughlin. So he has this technique that he refers to as stacking. Um, Fun fact, he had no involvement whatsoever in the creation of the horizontal stacking movement. It got named horizontal stacking because superficially, the kind of process of creating these lines that we see in horizontal stacking looks somewhat like the lines that are created when he does vertical stacking, right? And vertical stacking, of course, involves a lot of what are called point isolation stalls. That is, you have the poi spinning back and forth in a pendulum, or it could be like part of an anti-spin flower. But basically, when you get this moment right here, where the poi tether is straight out to the side and the head is pointing one way and the hands going the other way, you can bring the hand directly above the poi head to stop this movement. Now, you're probably already seeing that dime stops are basically built into this. That is, when I do these pendulum stalls, I more or less have to do a dime stop in order to get the poi to stop moving, right? In fact, if I don't do them as a dime stop, it tends to look a lot sloppier, doesn't it? Okay, so how do we make things like this work? So one basic exercise you can do is just like work on getting down your vertical stacks and really make each and every one of those moments land, right? I One of those things that you really have to focus on in doing vertical stacks is making sure that whichever hand is going to be the bottom hand doesn't move while the hand that is going to be the top hand is moving up and around. Yeah. I very frequently have a problem where I let the bottom hand move a little bit on the way down, which just totally destroys the illusion. Um, but basically, what you're looking for is to train one of your hands to stay completely in place as the other hand moves towards it. And of course, you can do things like walking up with a series of pendulums or using an anti-spin to get around on top or using an in-spin flower. There's lots of different ways of doing this, right? So the first step is honestly just to get comfortable with doing some of the basic stacks and also to drill getting in those pendulum stalls and see just how cleanly you can get it such that you get the poi to stop moving entirely as it's going from place to place, right? Once you've done that, I think you can play around with the idea of what if I accent what I am doing by adding some of those dime stops to it. So, for example, y'all will know that I am a big fan of doing plane breaks. Now, the thing is that whenever I do a plane break, it's also possible to do one of those point isolation stalls. So, for instance, if I'm doing, say, like my 4 petal anti-spin flowers, I have that moment at the sides when I can switch into horizontal planes, right? Well, but here's the thing: is I can also use that as a moment to do my whatchamacallit, my point isolation stalls. As I do those flower petals out to the side, I treat them as stalls, and then they're pendulums, and boom, I close them up, right? They're still moving just a little bit because this is a technique that I'm still in the process of working on. But you can definitely see the kind of potential there for what can happen as you're moving from place to place, and you can do things like focus shifts and the like. Yeah. Um, I don't think that you can overmug this one, to be perfectly frank with you. I think if you're nailing the dime stops with the poi, then the impression of what this is going to come across. Yeah. Now we can add a dimension to this, and this is something that is like semi-new that I'm still kind of hashing out for myself by say like adding the movement of the feet into it. So for instance, I can pick up a knee and a foot at the same time and boom, walk them over together. Now that's pretty difficult if you don't have a good sense of balance. I definitely struggle with this one. Boom, and trying to keep it stable as my foot is kind of moving with the direction of the poi. The other possibility is that you can just like play around with it in space and see what happens as you explore the space with the two together, right? Um, I definitely think that it's possible to do some very cool things in terms of dynamic shifts because, again, you know, poi is always moving, and the last thing anybody expects from that is a dime stop out of it, right? There's something about that that feels so unpoi like that I think it registers with audiences in a pretty major way that you know there's something about the spell that has just been broken, you know? You can try out various different approaches to moving smoothly before boom, you find your dime stop, right? You can be free flowing and boom, find your dime stop. The thing to look out for is any moment when one or both of the poi are in a horizontal position. That's when you have that opportunity, boom, to do your dime stop and get to a stacking place, right? So if you want to, you could just walk around doing your dime stops any which way you want to and making just walking around continuing to stack and everything. The danger here is making sure that you wind up in a place where you really have just like killed the momentum on the poi, because nothing is going to kill this illusion more than the poi continuing to move, right? So first get real good at those those point isolation stalls, and that will be kind of the underpinnings of getting the rest of it down. Um, how am I doing on time here? Oh, good. Um, so I think maybe some like practical ways I tend to use this. Um, y'all may have noticed that I'm a big fan of doing this thing where I'm going into a corkscrew, open up, boom, and there's a point isolation stall there, coming out of it, going into the corkscrew, going the other way, and again, boom, hitting the dime stop off of that. So it winds up being that you go boom to corkscrew, boom to those point isolation stalls, right? Um, it's just a handy place where you can find those horizontal moments. Another common one that I like using is going from this 4 pedal anti-spin versus 2 pedal anti-spin place, and boom, works just the same way, yeah? So again, I get to that place where this would normally be a horizontal plane break into a horizontal buzzsaw, right? But I can instead turn it into, boom, another dime stop and get straight back. Whoops, pardon me. So we do the stall, boom. So again, the trick is that once you do the stall, boom, you got to get your hands above the poi heads as soon as possible. If you can really nail that line where both of the poi heads are at exactly the same height, which as you can see is somewhat of a challenge for me, but that was closer. The visual of that is really going to pop in ways that I think look really, really cool. Let me check on the chat right quick. Ooh, isolations. Hagen from France. Hey, Drex. Hello. Cool. All right. Seems like everybody out there is chilling. We're going to switch over to Q&A here in just 1 minute. Yeah. So places where you can use this, again, in this hybrid, boom. You can also use it coming out of a 4-pedal anti-spin flower. Here's a fun place. You see, whoops, if I take a linear isolation across the middle of this, you see how there's that moment where the 2 poi are horizontal right there, boom, or I could easily switch this into another horizontal buzzsaw. I can also use that as a moment for a dime stop too. You'll note it's probably easier for me to do that with my right hand on top than my left hand on top. Whereas if I'm going to do the horizontal buzzsaw, it's easier for me to do it with my right hand on bottom rather than on top. Reason for that just being that my right hand is dominant, so finding that position is a little bit easier for me with the right hand on top. That actually looks a lot cooler than I thought it did. Yeah, and of course, I'm sorry, my brain is kind of fried. It's been a long week. I had another example I was going to show you all. I'm trying to think of, oh, duh. Yeah. So another one that I'm notorious for is doing these kind of utistalls, which, again, as you're doing a utistall around, boom, there's an opportunity to do, that was a bad one, to do another one of those point isolation stalls and end on a dime stop, right? I'm not doing the full the full kind of pirouette with it because I'm on carpet right now, and it is very, very hard to pirouette on carpet. Let me tell you what. So yeah, you have those opportunities. Say like when you're doing Zan's Diamond as well, like that. Pretty cool, right? Yeah, it's really just looking for those moments when the poi are sticking straight out horizontally, and you can point isolate your hand around to the top of it. And you look for those moments when the poi are pointed out horizontally. And you can also just use them as moments to walk around and make the dime stops an integral part of your flow. I honestly think that flowing out with vertical stacking like this is super underrated and something I'd like to see more people doing. I don't even see Ronin do it anymore. And I think doing these dime stops and these suspensions are an absolutely perfect way to explore this and make it look cool and add a bit of a dancier element to it. Yeah. All right. Awesome. It is remarkably warm up here, my friends, I must say. So I'm going to go ahead and switch us over into Q&A here. Oh, whoops. There we go. Sorry, that should have been different there. Anywho, so thanks once again to UltraPoi for sponsoring this video. You can grab a set of these OrbPoi LED contact poi. Oh, I didn't say this, but I should. These dime stops, and specifically these dime stops built around stacking and point isolation stalls, they're going to look best with contact poi. If you have a form factor that has a more visible tether or that doesn't concentrate attention around the tip of it in the way that contact poi do, um, you know, it doesn't focus attention in the right way. Like I wouldn't try doing this style as much with sock poi, for example, because so much of the attention in sock poi is focused on the entire length of the poi that it's going to be distracting as you do the point isolation stall. It's not going to look quite the same way. So, yeah, go ahead and start getting me those questions. And yeah, I will begin answering them. Real quickly, one other way you can help out the channel, there should be a little square button that has like a dollar sign in it. That is Super Chat. If you do that, all the money comes straight to me. YouTube doesn't keep any of it. So it's a great way to support the channel. And if you do indeed ask me a question via Super Chat, I will prioritize your question and get to it sooner rather than later. Whereas if you just ask me a question in the chat, I am going to I'm going to just go through those in the order that they come in. Yeah, super. All right, so let's see what questions you all have out there now. Then, cool. So. Daywin Spins asked, do you have a video talking about how to do the dime stop? No, I don't. I would honestly look up dance videos on YouTube because the concept of a dime stop is like a concept that I am borrowing from the dance world. And they will have better tutorials than I could teach on the topic. I literally just think of a dime stop as being, boom, trying to hit the shape that you're going for. And a thing I did leave out about dime stops is that they tend to hit a little better, not just like with random pose, but with poses that boom hit a particular angle. There's something about hitting those angles that really registers with the human brain. So look to try and see if you can nail those angles both with the poi as well as your body every time you hit those dime stops, and they make them hit a little bit clearer, and you get definitely a better reaction out of the audience from them. But yeah, in general, look up dance videos on how to do dime stops because they're going to be better than what I could teach. Because I came at poi first and then came to dance, and I think that we need more people that are learning the two in tandem because trying to combine the two now at this point is a bit of a challenge for me. Great question. Skylar G asks, have you tried FPC from FlowToys? It's funny you should mention that. To the best of my knowledge, there is an FPC conversion kit from FlowToys in the mail coming to me right now. So I will be trying them out soon, and I will most likely post a review with my thoughts. I will say that I'm not like I'm not super into like a lot of people are really, really, really into their tethers. Like they really there is like the right material, and they go jumping from material to material, and they have very strong opinions on the different types of materials. I've never been one of those. It took me the longest time to switch from 6 millimeter cords to 3/8 inch cords, and I did so under duress. I literally just did it because um, when I started my quarantine tutorial series, was it last year? No, I think it was the year before. It was the year before in 2020. When I started that series, I quickly ran into a problem in that I usually like take a screen grab out of a video that I make and I turn that into the thumbnail. And what I kept discovering was that no matter how high I set the shutter speed, which the higher you set the shutter speed on the camera, the more each individual frame looks like a photograph with less motion blur to it. No matter how high I set that shutter speed, I had a difficult time capturing the tethers of the poi for a thumbnail. I had a really difficult time selecting them and then being able to cut them out to use for the thumbnail. If you go back and you look at some of those thumbnails, the poi look really rough. Um, so I actually switched to 3/8 inch tethers specifically because it just made my life easier for doing the thumbnail. It's such a weird thing to admit, but yeah, that's what it was. It made it like take half the time in order to make the thumbnail, and then over time I just got used to it, and now 3/8 inch is my favorite. But I don't really have a favorite material per se. Um, so yeah, FPC is on the way, and I will share my thoughts when I get it. We'll see if I have strong thoughts on it, because again, like I usually don't invest that much time in thinking about the props. Like in my mind, the prop should be transparent. It should just like get out of your way so you can go flow with it. And there's been a lot of cases where I've given products not great reviews specifically because there are elements of those products that like fail that test, that are so like kind of in your face, that I'm just like, no, 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 I don't want something that's in my face. I want a set of props that is just going to disappear into me so I can concentrate on getting flow on. So we'll see if FPC fits that build, right? Grimoire 1, how do you deal with feeling repetitive in your flow, especially spinning fire? I feel like I end up just doing the same few moves over and over, and it's very frustrating. So, truth be told, I still feel like I just do the same tricks over and over again a lot of the time. And what'll usually happen is I'll come up with a new favorite at some point and just like run it into the ground. I was not aware I was doing this until there's a guy out on the West Coast who, like, at one point at the fire festivals, his whole thing was that he would do like um, he would do impressions of famous poi spinners, and he did me one time, and literally all he had to do in order to do an impression of me was do these three tricks in a combo that I was just doing to death at the time, and like literally he like for every other flow artist he would like do something about how they held their body or like the look on their face or what have you, and I was the one and only one that he's just like, nope, I'm doing these two tricks, and everyone got it. And at that point I was just like, oh no, okay. um so I get stuck in this too. I definitely do, and there's a few ways I get out of it, honestly. Like I go looking for inspiration a lot. Recently, what I've actually been doing is I'll take like a 15-minute walk before I go for a flow session. And sometimes during the course of that walk, I will just like see something in my mind's eye. And I'll usually sit down during the flow session and be all like, okay, let me see if I can actually make the thing happen. And about 90% of the time, I can. So yeah, sometimes I get great ideas when I'm doing other things. And I think part of what makes that work is like doing a physical activity that doesn't involve a whole bunch of brain power. So my mind can like start to wander a little bit, and that's when flashes of inspiration will happen. Um, but besides that, another thing that I'll frequently do is I'll take on specific challenges for myself. So the entirety of this level lesson came out of my spending the past few weeks like listening to a lot of music that, had a really kind of staccato sound to it, a really kind of staccato beat or instrumentation, and me kind of taking the idea of, okay, so what if my flow here did not involve spinning the poi? What if my flow here was all about just hitting every single one of these accents? And what came out of that was doing these stacks in conjunction with these dime stops. And, that then became a big part of several flow sessions I've done recently. I want to say that there's a lot of that in the heavy video that I uploaded last week, and there's also a bit of it in the tear in my heart video I did last week as well. Um, so yeah, sometimes I will give myself a specific challenge just to see if I can do it. Like, um, you know, one recent challenge I gave myself was to come up with combos that would build energy and then release it. Um, so, and I've done things too, like I spin for 5 minutes, and in the course of that 5 minutes, I have to maintain as much volume as I possibly can. So I need to keep my arms extended. Sometimes it'll be as little volume as I possibly can. So give yourself little challenges like that and see what comes out of it. And sometimes it breaks you out of your patterns, and sometimes there are really great discoveries that come out of it too. Yeah. I feel like that was a very, very long answer to that question. I hope you don't mind. Cool. Daywin Spin says, awesome. Mandolin, poi and dance together all the way. I concur. I concur. Sand Snake 04, new to poi here. Glad to have caught a live one. I'm glad that you've caught a live one too. Let me know down in the chat if you have any questions. I am here to answer them tonight, after all. Jonathan Wright, hey Drex, thank you much for the motivation and inspiration weekly. Have you used other props for poi spinning? In particular, I'm wondering if you have used poi whips. Not as such. I've definitely used poi snakes, and it's interesting that you asked that question. So, um, there is a there's a flow artist who goes by the name Arashi. That's not the name he was born with, but he goes by Arashi. And he has a very, very unique poi style that I can think of very, very few people that spin anything like him. He just like, and it's weird watching him because sometimes I feel like I see him do something that I never would have thought of, and sometimes I see him doing things that feel to me like what somebody would do the first time they picked up poi. I knew nothing about it. Um, but one of the interesting elements of his style that Alien John actually cued me in on at one point is that, um, you know, a lot of poi spinning comes from club swinging, honestly. Like things like flowers, definitely like flowers and, snakes and things like that. I'll come out of club swinging. According to Alien John, Arashi's background is in whips, and sometimes he essentially uses his poi as very, very short whips. And once Alien John said that to me, it instantly explained a whole bunch of things about Arashi's style that I never got before. Um, and I don't know that that's necessarily like the thing that's going to catch on or that I would recommend for everybody to learn. But it is something that I thought was really, really interesting and unique about the way that Arashi um, uh, does poi. I have known plenty of people who have treated whips as giant sets of poi. I've known fewer that have gone the other way. But the short answer is no, I have not used poi whips myself. Um, in terms of other props for poi spinning, I mean, I've done club swinging for sure. Um, About 12 years ago, I was really into rope dart, and I treated my rope dart as though it was just a very large poi, um, which actually got me into some hot water with some other rope dartists who were very, very hardcore about like the martial arts side of it. And they would see me doing like basically big poi tricks, and they'd be just like, "What are you doing, kid? What is going on here?" So I didn't keep that up for very long. But yeah, I have used a rope dart as a poi, and I think that that's the most exotic I've gotten there. Yeah, thanks for the question there, Jonathan. Alonso Macias. Hi, it's my birthday. Ah, cheers from Mexico. Feliz cumpleaños. ¿Y cuántos años tienes? Mochis Flow. I don't know what that means. Is that a handle? Um, yeah, sorry, I don't recognize that. But yeah, feliz cumpleaños. Happy birthday. I'm glad you're celebrating it here with us. Cool, cool. Let me know if you have anything special planned for the day. Um, yeah. Grimoire1 says, super appreciate it. You're so welcome. Sand Snake 04. Any mistakes you've made along the way for a new poi spinner to avoid? Yes. It's funny you should ask that. I am working on a project right now geared around teaching people good habits from the beginning, and I will share at least one of those things with you right now. All right. So, there is a process that every single poi spinner of my generation went through when they like. So everybody would learn a 3-beat weave and a butterfly or thread the needle for like their first two tricks, right? Now, this sets up so many bad habits because you'll notice that as I'm doing these things, I'm not moving my arms very much, and I'm really concentrating the movements of the poi around my hands and my wrists. So then, when people do switch to doing flowers, I'm sure you've seen people that do this thing where they just keep spinning the poi and they're like kind of trying to move their hands and everything, and it looks a mess. And the reason is that we spend the initial period where we're learning how to spin poi, concentrating on building this kind of kinesthetic awareness that is just like your hand needs to keep the poi spinning at all times. Um, and spoilers, once you get to any intermediate or advanced spinning, this does not work in your favor. I think it's much better to start people off playing around with things like extensions. And if you can get them to do flowers right from the get go, this is going to give them a different understanding of the prop. Rather than you're trying to concentrate all the movements in your hands and arms, it trains people to treat the prop as an extension of their arms, which I think is way more useful because then you get conscious control over when you do perform a beat with the poi, as opposed to having to undo the habit of keeping the poi spinning the entire time. Like basically every poi spinner of my generation, after they like spent the first arc of their poi spinning days learning the 3-beat weave and thread the needle and the butterfly and everything, they had to untrain themselves to keep the poi spinning at all times. Like um, I think of this as a skill that I refer to as beat control. That is having a conscious choice over when the poi is actually going to like perform a beat. So you can go back and forth between, say, your extensions before turning them into flowers if you want to, or doing pendulums with them. This is such a fundamental bad habit that almost everybody picks up to start with, that I want to teach poi in such a way that we're giving people repetition, or rather beat control. Repetition control is another one, but beat control right from the get-go. And I am working on a new beginner level course that is going to be available on my learning site that is going to use that approach. So keep your eyes peeled for announcements around that. That, without a doubt, is the biggest bad habit I see people wind up with early on that I would like to change. Oh, Kurt sent a super chat. Huzzah! Thank you, Kurt. Kurt asks, I have recently figured out how to do a 180 in split time crossers, but I can't seem to do a 360. Any tips? Split same, not split up. Cool. I'm glad to hear that because I don't know how the hell to do that in split ops. Um, okay, so let me see if I have this right. I'm gonna switch back to full body here and take off my socks because it's about to tear up some carpet here, right? Okay, so this is what I think you mean. So as I'm starting off with a crosser here and everything, I can very easily just like do a shunny step, going back and forth from side to side, switching from my clockwise crosser to my counterclockwise crosser. I think that that is what you're referring to that you already have down. And what I think you're saying that you want to get down is something more like a pirouette, like that. Um, so, in the absence of you correcting me on that, which I will try and keep an eye on the chat here so you can correct me if I've got this wrong. Here's how you get to that full 360. Now, the first thing to know about it is that really what you're doing is you're chasing one of the poi around. So, um, because I usually turn my body to my right, I'm going to be following the poi that's in my right hand, which because I'm doing a crosser, is now over on my left hand side. Clear as mud. Excellent. Okay, so this initiates when that right hand poi is going down past my feet. It happens right there. It's when my right hand is closest to the camera. Right there. Right there. Now, what I'm going to do is let that momentum as it's going down carry me around. I want to make sure that I'm keeping that poi in my field of vision all the way around as I'm turning. Yeah? So as I go around, it goes up and then back down. Really, if you look at my head as I'm doing this, I'm looking at the poi head as I go around, which is bad. I should be spotting because I'm doing a pirouette, but crossers are a unique case where it is helpful to keep that poi in your field of vision the entire way around. So really what you should see is like the poi going up and down like this in your field of vision, and your entire body is chasing it around. Um, Things that you can do in your body to aid with this. I wish we taught pirouettes better in the poi world. Here are the most important things you need to know about doing pirouettes. Number one, the entire momentum of your body has to go up. You wind up on your tiptoes as you're doing this stuff, right? The more that you can get your mass up, the longer and smoother your pirouette is going to be. Number two, um, clearly there's the rotating motion of a pirouette. The rotating motion does not work unless you can keep your center of gravity centered above that, what we call the standing leg. That is the one that is kind of riveted in place. What we call the working leg is the one that comes up that gives you the momentum to get around. So ways that you can practice this actually are, there's a little thing we used to do in dance class where we would take a step and go up, and we would try to hold ourselves up on our tiptoes for like 3 seconds and then come back down. And then you do the other foot. You go up, you try to keep your balance on your tiptoes for like 3 seconds and then come back down. The longer you can keep this stable, the more stable you're going to be in that pirouette. And thus, in theory, you should be able to go straight around. I think the majority of the problem there is not necessarily the movement of the poi, but getting the pirouette to go through fast and smooth enough that you can keep on following that poi in your right hand. Boom, as it goes around. Now, there is definitely a tricky moment when you land. And the reason for that is that as you're spinning around, I don't know if you can tell this or not from watching on the video, but the planes of the crosser start to bow outward. And that's just like a byproduct of the fact that you're now spinning around in a circle. It turns the planes more diagonal than vertical. So it means that when you do land here, you have to make sure that that poi in your right hand gets all the way around behind you, and you have to return to your normal crosser. Now, when I have gotten this wrong, and bear in mind, like I still have problems doing this with meltdowns because that's a different point of mobility. And sometimes the planes bow out so much that they wind up in my legs. I do a little bit better with my crossers, specifically because um, I'm spotting the end of it. Like you'll note that the point where my eyes are tracking the poi goes all the way around back behind me so that I can return to this position right here. I literally think of this as being I'm taking the poi from right in front of me to all the way around behind me. Yeah. Um, so this might be a good way of describing this. I literally think of this as being like as I'm doing my crosser and going back and back and forth, I think that I'm inserting a complete spin with my body in between when the poi does a beat in front of me and when it goes behind me. It's like I'm shoving something more in there. So rather than just going behind me, in front of me, in front of me, behind me, I go from in front of me all the way around to behind me. And that's what makes the whole thing work for me. And do bear in mind, it's going to be a little unstable when you get to the end, and you might have to like lean back just a little bit to kind of correct for how the planes bow out. Um, but that should help you on your journey there. Let me know if you have any further questions to clarify all that. Great question. I should do a video on that topic. Actually, going to make a note of that right now. And thank you again for the super chat, Kurt. That is super helpful. Cool. All right, I have that written down. Cool. So let me drop back and see what other questions popped up while I was answering that super chat. Thank you again for that, Kurt. Skylar G says, I find changing little things like my tethers or the poi I'm spinning helps to revive my motivation to pick up my poi. Cool. That's great to hear. Daywin Spin says, do you have a favorite song to spin to? Yes. Right now it is XXXO by MIA. I'm like, there's two songs that I just like randomly got suggested on my iTunes list the other day. One is XXXO, and the other one is going to look it up because it's so good. It is Contagious by Night Riots. Both of these two songs are excellent, and I have been absolutely just like enjoying the hell out of spinning to them lately. So yeah, those are my two favorite songs to spin to right now. Jonathan writes, thank you so much. Keep up the awesome work. I will do my best. Thanks for the feedback. Mandolin, haha, I have totally played and danced with darts in that poi type of way, and it's underrated. I agree. I think people should get to play around with darts like they're big poi if they want to. Sand Snake says, that's what mine looks like. Excellent. Kurt Hobbs, split same, not split up. Cool. And I got it right. Sweet. All right. I'm glad I was able to answer your question, and I hope what I said was helpful. Yeah. Sandsnake04 says, that makes sense. Thank you. Looking forward to the upcoming video. Yeah, well, it'll be a series, and it might be a few months before the entire thing drops. What I'm probably going to do is get some people to help me beta test it, which if you would like to be one of the beta testers, you can send me a DM. And basically, I'm going to, because I want this to be like my beginner course, like not just a beginner course, but my beginner course. It is teaching my method for learning poi, and I want it to be something that like more or less exists to just like stand the test of time and be the thing that I can point people to and be like, this is how you start with my method. So yeah, let me know if you'd like to be a beta tester on that, and help me get it in position to be able to share it with the wider world. I'm sure I'd love to. Lindsay Applegate says, totally relate to learning 3-beat weave and butterflies. No transition, no rep control. Recently found your channel and started from square one with your videos. Now learning so much. Yay! I'm glad to hear that. Welcome to our world. I appreciate knowing that I can help you on your flow journey here. Uh, Mantralakia, I think, says, thank you. You're so welcome. Um, cool. I am seeing that it is 5 or 4 till the hour. So if people have final questions they want to get in before I wrap this up, send those out to me right now. Oh, Kurt Hobbs. Does it make any difference which arm is on top or bottom in the crosser? Not really. I usually do right hand on bottom, simply because that's my default. But yeah, I don't think it actually matters which hand is on top or on bottom. One thing that, ooh, I should have said this. One thing that does matter is what your direction of spin is. So, like, you notice how I was turning around to my right? That's because my dominant direction of spin is clockwise. So, in order to follow that right hand poise that's going around, I have to, excuse me, turn to my left. What am I even talking about here? I need to turn to my left going all the way around. Um, if you're down, be turning around to your right. That is very, very important because otherwise you wind up doing the pirouette opposite to the direction that the poi is spinning in, and you are probably going to hit yourself in the process of that. Nobody will enjoy that. So yeah, um, rule of thumb rule of thumb is that if your dominant direction of spin is clockwise, you're turning to your left. If your dominant direction of spin is counterclockwise, you're turning to your right. Yes, I'm sorry. I should have mentioned that. I should have mentioned that sooner. Skylar G says, "Finish the book." All right, I'll work on it. Yeah, I still haven't picked it back up. I know. I know. I teased that a while back, but yeah, I will. I promise. I'll get back on it. I'll get back on it. Jasper K says, "Hey Drex, haven't done poi in a while. Thanks, Canadian Winter." I hear that. But now that I have lots of indoor space, your stream tonight inspired me to do a bit of flowing tonight. Excellent, excellent. Please share some of that flow too. I'd love to see it. Poison Sushi says, "Do you think seasoned spinners can unlearn bad habits?" Absolutely. I'm in the process of unlearning several bad habits right now. Probably the big one is just how I align my hands vertically in split time opposites, because like um, when I come across my middle, I'm prone to having each hand even with its native shoulder, which is something that works perfectly fine if I'm doing together same. But in split time opposites, it means that there's like a little break in them, and I'm training myself to keep them even. So the first trick is to keep them even. The way I'm doing that is I'm actually keeping both of them on the same side, but at a certain point, I want to train them to being both body center. So, yes, seasoned spinners can absolutely unlearn bad habits. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. You absolutely can teach an old dog new tricks. I swear you can. Casey says, "Hey Drex, thank you so much for streaming today." You're welcome. Any suggestions for staying in practice with poi when you don't have anything to spin with your poi for an extended period of time? Yeah, absolutely. What was the last new thing that you learned? And how clean is it? Can you get it to be even cleaner? Can you find 3 transitions that all utilize that trick that you learned during your last creative burst? These are all things that you can be working on, even if like you're at a plateau, or you know you don't feel like you're making progress or anything like that. These are all things that you can be working on that are going to improve your spinning over time, and sometimes they can lead to new discoveries. So yes, those are 2 things that I would recommend for sure. Um, Mandolin says, "Could you possibly catch the poi to make those dime stop motion movements?" Um, it would be tough because there's a reason that Ty's gunslinger spiral wraps work for this, and it is not only that like it stops one end of the poi, but it's also that the other end is so short that it basically stops moving too. The problem is when you throw poi, you're working in a place where like not only have you introduced a lot of momentum to the entire thing, including the tether, but you're also in a place where like there's kind of a recovery that has to happen after you've introduced all that momentum. So the only way that I could really see making throws work with the dime stops, and your timing has to be like super on with this, is if rather than just catching the tether, so if you catch the tether and then immediately do one of those one of those um, pendulum point isolation stalls, that would work. The other option would be that if you can catch it in, let me see if I can do this. Catch it in, almost. This is, oh, there we go. Catch it in one of Ty's gunslinger spiral wrap suspensions. Like, really, it's a question of integrating the toss with something that facilitates a suspension. The toss in and of itself just adds more momentum to the poise. So I think it'd be really, really tough to use that for a dime stop in itself. That said, if you've got an approach to doing that, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. Nancy Lazarick, I think. How many beta testers are you looking for? As many as I can get. As many as I can get, honestly. So yeah, if you're interested, send me a message. Let me know. I need beta testers. I need them bad. Rebel Without a Cause says Diamond versus Box 4-petal flowers. Just can't get the feel for them. Diamond is a bit wonky. Box I've never managed. Tips for consistency and better pedals. Timing mirrors stumped for years. Yeah, I will. Let me do this one right quick before we wrap up here for the night. Okay, so I think, I fundamentally think of Diamond and box mode 4-petal anti-spin flowers as almost just like being completely different things in themselves in terms of how they feel with like the kinesthetic knowledge of them. So I think of diamond mode flowers as being moments when I'm popping the poi up and dropping it down and giving myself a moment on either side of the pattern to catch my breath, right? So it's really, really all about getting the poi to almost stall up and stall down. That doesn't work with box mode. With box mode, I think of it as 4 connected segments. So I'm basically dragging the poi between 4 different points. So as I have the poi spinning, I think that I'm going to go right, up, left, down, right, up, left, down. And you see how as I move in between all those positions, I'm like kind of stretching out the movement of the poi. That is deliberate. Some people refer to this style of moving as being like floats. Really, what it is linear extensions. I literally just think that I'm moving my hand between the 4 corners of a box in straight lines, and that I'm stretching out the movement of the poi between them. Now, getting these two things to work together, I think is actually like might be easier than you think. In fact, I was doing this before I really understood how to do either diamond or box mode flowers. And really, what that is you want to get the poi spinning in split time, same direction. Keep your hands together and together same. And with my right hand, I'm going to boop, point it up and get it over to my right hand side. Keep the poi in split time, same direction as you're doing that. Now my right hand poi is going to drop down and go over to the other side. So pop up, drop down, pop up, drop down. Here's the thing, if I can concentrate on keeping my left hand in split time same direction relative to my right hand, then guess what? It automatically finds a box mode flower. Automatically. I don't have to apply the knowledge of how to do a box mode flower solo in order to make that work. I just have to concentrate both on getting the right hand poi to pop up and drop down and keeping the left hand poi split time same direction relative to it, which, depending upon how you look at it, might be a whole skill in itself. Cool. Good question. Wheel plane. Oh, you punk. Oh, Lord. Okay. So, for wheel plane, again, for diamond mode, I think that pop and drop pop and drop, pop and drop, pop and drop. For box mode, it's going to be dragging. So I drag back and forth, up and down, back and forth, up and down, and just take that around. Fun fact, I actually learned how to do split time same direction in box mode before I learned how to do it in diamond mode. And because all the cool kids were doing diamond mode at the time, I thought I was doing something wrong. And I didn't realize until later that box mode can sometimes be more challenging for this reason. But yeah, this is how you learn each of them in wheel plane here. Now, if you want to do this as a hybrid, so doing them as a hybrid, I would recommend starting off with the poi in together same and see if you can keep, oh my God. Yeah, oh goodness. Brains. Oh, there we go. Oh my God, that's so hard. Yeah, so try and keep the poi in together same and concentrate on keeping that right hand doing diamond mode. And if you can do both at the same time, then you've got it. Oh my God. That is all the brain power I have left tonight, friends. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. I don't know that I've ever tried doing that before. Mm-hmm. That's where my problem was. Yeah. So, yeah, if you're doing it in wheel plane, you need to keep the poi in together same. Again, try and have the right hand go diamond mode, and that will more or less do all the things. And the trick there is you really have to think they both go up, both of the poi go up at the same time, and they both go down at the same time. Oh my goodness, and it is a challenge. I'm not gonna lie. That's a challenge. Certainly was for me. Yeah. So, yeah, and Donovan Riley says, oh, sorry, I missed one up here. Mandolin says, actually catching while still holding the tether. Oh, yeah, I get what you're saying. Yes, that is absolutely a way to do it. So what Mandolin is saying is if you have these moments where, boom, you kind of like have the poi spinning and you decide to catch the head. Yes, that absolutely works. 100%. Yes. Sorry, I didn't know that was what you were getting at. Um, I will say, like, having done it, it's extremely difficult to do it with both hands at the same time. I have a lot more luck with it when I do just one hand at a time, but maybe that's a thing I'll train one of these days. But yeah, that is absolutely a possibility there. 100%. That works. Cool. Donovan Riley says, just learned the hybrid last week. Outstanding. Rub without a cause. You're the man. Been following you for years. You're a legend. Can't wait to try that hybrid for myself. Pat the head and rub the belly times 1,000. You're telling me, friend. Goodness. And Donovan Riley gives me a laughing face. And with that, dear friends, I'm going to bring this to a close. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight, for joining me. Once again, thanks to UltraPoi for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to get a set of these Orb Poi LED contact poi from UltraPoi, you can do so by heading to ultrapoi.com and using my promo code DrexFactor with a 0 instead of an O at checkout. That gets you a discount on your order and it helps out the channel so everybody wins. Yay! Thank you once again to UltraPoi for sponsoring this live stream, and I think all the live streams on this channel, honestly. Real quickly before we head out, I also want to do a quick thank you to the friends of the channel. Thank you to Dark Monk, Flowfest, Flow Toys, Juggling Calling, Pyroterra Light Toys, Spin Bowls, and UltraPoi for making the videos, helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all of these awesome companies by checking out the links that I will have down in the description of this video. I didn't include them at first. And also big thanks to the non-business friends of the channel. Johnny Howard, Lane Buczynski, and Pekka Pekkonen. Yeah, thank you all so much for watching tonight. And hang on, Mandolin says that was awesome. Thank you. That last bit answering Rebel's question was awesome. Thank you kindly for the awesome tips tonight. Much appreciated. Sure thing. Anton Kettner, can you get stalls looking just as good with Technora rope with chains? It depends on what you're looking for. Short answer is yes. You can get clean looking stalls with either one, but the effect with Technora is going to look different because the tethers are going to be thicker and yeah, chains present slightly different. Oh, if you got Cash App, Venmo, etc. No, yeah, totally. I am on Venmo. I am Drex Factor on Venmo. Y'all want to send me stuff? I'm more than happy to have it. I appreciate you. I appreciate you very much. Cool. Yeah, you can get stalls looking just like so. The real answer to this question is that there are lots of things with poi that the presentation changes depending upon the form factor, and the form factor of the tethers is a really important thing. So yes, you can get clean stalls, but that doesn't mean that they will look exactly the same with Technora as they do with chains, and that's just because it's a different material and it presents differently, is the short answer. Yeah. Thanks so much. Have a good week. You're so welcome. Thank you all for watching tonight. I'm going to go ahead and wind things down. I appreciate you all so much. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next month. I usually do these live streams the third Friday of the month. I didn't do that this time because I had a scheduling conflict, but March will again be the third Friday of the month. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. Take care. Peace.